Good afternoon, folks. We're just letting people in right now, so we'll wait about a minute here and while people come into the session, and then we'll get started. Right. I know we'll still have some more people coming in, but we'll get started. I never always hate to punish the people that show up on time by waiting for the ones that are late. So I'm Dave Carter with Flowery Hill Institute here, along with Chris Roper, my fellow regional director, and we're really pleased to have our guest with us today. This is the third sort of financing roundtable we've done this month. It's kind of a pertinent topic, and I know that many of you that are on the session today have been notified that you're receiving a grant or working with somebody that has been notified. And of course, most of these grants, unless you were part of the MCAP equipment only, these are grants that require some cost sharing or matching funds. And so people are trying to do that. Those of you that aren't receiving grants, you're looking at how to finance your operations. So just as a point, the two previous ones we did that you can download from our website at Flowery Hill Institute is we did one on financing and leasing for equipment for facilities. And then a couple of weeks ago, we did one on some alternative financing methods for meat processing. Today, we're going to focus strictly, though, on some of the financing, the opportunities offered, particularly through USDA rural development. And we're really pleased to have with us three folks to be speaking, three subject experts here. Brian Wiles is with USDA Rural Development, and I forget his new title, but I'll let him say it when he introduces himself. Joseph Harrell is with North Avenue Capital, which is a financial institution that specializes in USDA financing through working with the business and industry loan guarantee programs and others. And then Meg Jackson is with the Center for Rural Affairs in Nebraska. The Center for Rural Affairs is one of the organizations that receive funding through the USDA's Meat and Poultry Intermediary Lending Program. And they're sort of serving as the informal coordinator of a peer network of the MPILP programs around the country. So she's not only going to talk about that program, but about the overall program as well. Just a couple of housekeeping items here is this is being recorded. So it will be available on the Flowery Hill website on our MPPTA resource websites. The participants, those of you that are on here, you're off camera and off mic, but we encourage you to type your questions into the chat or into the Q&A, and we will try and get to as many of those as possible. If we can't get to all of the questions, and even if we can, we do try and prepare an FAQ document to accompany the recording of this on our website. So you can download that as well. So with that, I'm going to get started and let each of our panelists. Chris, anything I missed here in the introduction?
Two things really quick. I'll be brief, but we have a lot of familiar names on the attendee list, so we very much appreciate you all tuning in and participating in these roundtable discussions. And also, I'll just forewarn you, Brian, Mr. Wiles has joined us. He is not working on the MPEP Phase 2 program, so please be respectful. He cannot answer any questions on that, whether you received it or you didn't receive it. So I want to throw that caution out there. He's going to share with us a lot of other programs, but he's not here to talk about MPEP Phase 2. So I wanted to throw that caution out there real quick.
Very important point, Chris. save you some time there,
Yeah,
right?
hopefully.
So as long as we were calling out, Brian, go ahead and introduce yourself and let people know what you are working on right now.
Very good. Good afternoon, everybody, and Chris, thank you for that. Probably saved me some skin in the future. My name is Brian Wiles. I'm now based out of Washington D.C. by way of Oklahoma, and a lot of familiar names and faces. I'm sure. My official title is the Director for Guaranteed Lending, and Rural Development has a 1RD program that encompasses some guaranteed loan programs, and that is my charge, and so I oversee the one of the divisions within our Rural Business and Cooperative Service. So looking forward to going into some additional programs and answering as many questions and reconnecting, and if nothing else, just having a name and a contact number for follow-up later on, and be glad to connect the dots if need be, answer questions down the road, or whether it's today or a week from now or a month from now. So thanks again. Thanks for having me as well, Dave.
Great. Joseph, you introduce yourself. You can even say why you have all those baseball bats behind you too. So
Well, I'll do the brief story there, but yes, Joseph Rowell. I am the CEO at North Avenue Capital. We started our firm about 10 years ago, with a focus on putting capital into rural markets in partnership with rural development with the USDA. We've been able to do that to the tune of about $750 million over the last 10 years across much of the country. And when we close a deal, we memorialize it with a nice classic Louisville Slugger. We like the kind of a nod to Americana, and so these bats are indications of projects we've had the privilege of helping to finance in rural America. So we do B&I lending into a broad range of industries. We do some renewable energy through the Rural Energy for America program. Community facilities is available for nonprofits, and then when food supply chain was in place, we did a little bit of that, and the agency's tinkering with that idea of earmarking funds specifically for probably the folks that are on this call. But either way, those programs or those opportunities fit into one or more of these other rural development programs. So we've had the privilege of doing that. I'm really honored to be on this call with you all. Thank you for having me.
right. And Meg, tell us a little bit about Center for Rural Affairs and your role in the NPILP program.
Yep. Hey, folks. Welcome. It's nice to be here and with this group. So glad to talk about all this. I am the loan specialist with the Center for Rural Affairs on our meat and poultry lending program. We were one of the other 29 organizations awarded funding with the USDA. It's a meat and poultry intermediary lending program, MPILP, because we love our acronyms, right? So we have, we got in total $15 million to establish a revolving loan fund to finance independent small meat and poultry processing facilities with loan financing. So we join, like I said, 29 organizations across the country. Unfortunately, those organizations only hit about 18 states. We're one of the only ones that can service a broader, wider range outside of we're based in Nebraska. We've been around as a nonprofit for 50 plus years. And are a CDFI the last 25 years, so we're a community development finance institution, mostly doing small business lending in rural communities and home mortgage lending, and now lending in the meat industry, in the meat sphere. So,
All right. Well, thank you all for being with us. And Ryan, one of the first questions that popped up in the Q&A already was talking about the Red Leg program, the Rural Economic Development Loan and Grant Program. And give us an overview specifically of the programs offered through rural development, that one as well as others.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, well, let's just start there with the Rural Economic Development Loan and Grant Program, or Red Leg. And Meg, I get it. The acronyms are they come fast and furious, and we don't have any creativity when it comes to naming our programs. So we just kind of go with what they do sometimes. But the Rural Economic Development Loan and Grant Program, it is a loan program. In spite of the fact that there is the term grant, and these are to small municipal power providers, electric co-ops, telephone co-ops, current borrowers, previous borrowers from rural development. As many of you know, we have an entire rural utility service that takes care of both electric and telecom, broadband, and so forth. And this program kind of came out of those borrowers. It is a very unique program, and there's some nuances to it. But what it is designed for is to put capital into rural areas and to increase the customer base load for these electric co-ops, or in some cases, small municipal power providers. Total dollar amount does fluctuate a little bit. This year it's $2 million. I've seen it as low as $740,000. I haven't seen it more than $2 million in quite a while, but that's the total amount that you would be able to get on the loan side for this year. Applications are accepted quarterly. In the past, there's been some funding pressure on it, but I think we're funding just about everything that comes in that's not getting bogged down by environmental things or something else. The way it works is it is a 0% loan, and it can be up for 10 years. You can push the payments back a couple of years, but it's at 0%. And that can be to drive some type of economic development, whether it is somebody that is tapping into those funds to open a franchise. It can be small, it can be large. We can be a part of the project. We can be a large part or a small part. It really just kind of depends on what that co-op is wanting to do and what the borrower's needs are. But the fact is, it is a 0% loan and can go up to 10 years. So pretty attractive financing as far as the rate, especially in today's rate structure. Now, there is that grant component to it, and the grant operates a little bit differently. It is still a grant, but the loan is repaid initially, and then those funds, when they come back in, are used as a revolving loan fund for that electric co-op or whatever entity, telephone co-op or whatever entity had completed the project. Some of the projects I've seen are different things like rail spurs, commercial buildings, municipal buildings. We've done things like franchises of restaurants and incubation centers, business parks, all kinds of stuff with this program. It's a great program. Not everybody is interested in it. When I was in Oklahoma, we outreached this program a lot, and we had several that loved the program and would use it frequently, and we had others that were like, let's just leave that to the banks, even though the interest rate was attractive. So you can be kind of hit and miss on whether or not your local co-op wants to bite off on it. But it's a great program. It's easy to access, easy to use. Competition is quarterly for these applications, and so work with the local state office and local specialist, and they will be the ones to kind of help things along. This particular program is handled on the state level.
Go ahead and cover some of the others. You got a pretty strong portfolio of programs you offer. So give us it's the 30,000 foot view of some of the others.
So I always want to start by talking about the Rural Business Development Grant. Again, another program handled on the state level. This is a grant that is eligible to Native American tribes or municipalities. In some cases, they can be nonprofits. Can be a combination of those. And this is a grant program that does not have a match requirement, although you do get points for the match. What drives this program is benefit to a small and emerging business. And so anything that is going to benefit a small and emerging business That definition is 50 employees or less. And again, the population limits are for 50,000 population or less for this program. There's different set-asides for it. There's a Native American set-aside. There is a persistent poverty set-aside where we can get different tracks of money. Good thing about this program is states are allocated funds on an annual basis, and so they handle their own competitions and will score the projects, and they will be able to fund them. What they can't fund, they will generally send one or two up to the national office where we keep a reserve and can fund some additional ones. If you have a need to attract a business, or you have an idea for like a business incubator, or you need some technical assistance and some training to benefit small businesses, this is the program that should be first and foremost on your toolbox, because there is no match component. But again, you get points for the match. And it's a really simple program. We've really streamlined it. It's very simplified. There's not a ton of documentation that's needed, and we can tap into those separate set-asides. Some of the projects that we've done are just simply helping small businesses expand, renovating buildings, doing some Main Street buildings. We've done technical assistance and training for specialized companies that are wanting to move into the area, different things like that. It's a very flexible program. And so if you have a kind of a neat idea for a project, make sure you tap into this. And again, it's handled on the state level, so tap into your local folks, and make sure that you are formulating your application generally in the fall, and applications are typically due February, and then we make the awards in May and June. So it is kind of a cyclical program in that aspect. Another program that is a grant program that's really popular is a value-added producer grant. That is a program where if you are changing the physical state of an ag commodity, whether it's food, timber, what have you, if you own the commodity and you are changing the physical state, or if you have some type of market segmentation from the rest of the market, whether it's organic or grass-fed beef or what have you, or if it's a local food component, you can tap into the value-added producer grant. That one does have a match component, and it is delivered on an annual basis as well. We have a NOFA that comes out, again, handled by the state. The applications are scored, and although the states do not get an allocation like they do on development grants, we've been able to fund quite a few more in that program than what we had historically. So the last few years we have had a little bit more money. That's probably a program that's going to continue to be around. Hopefully it'll be stood up pretty well in the next farm bill. But some really great projects, of course, dairies, wineries. We even did a couple of wineries in Oklahoma, believe it or not. So you wouldn't think Oklahoma is good for growing grapes, but we found some grapes that we could grow there. But also organic wheat, all natural beef, all natural poultry, those kind of things, all kind of fit in with value added, as well as some of the smaller projects too. Native American tribes are eligible for that. They can be an applicant, and so we've done heirloom seed projects and bison herds, beef herds, things like that. So it's a great project. A lot of really neat marketable commodities that we've seen that have come through and stood up those businesses that needed a little bit of push to get their product out. Real quick, I'll talk about the energy program because we do have a lot of grant money there. It's one thing that Joseph alluded to, the Rural Energy for America program. Right now we have a 50% grant for energy efficiency improvements or renewable energy to small businesses that are eligible. Again, 50% grant. So anything that's going to improve energy efficiency will be likely eligible. It has to be a small business according to what the SBA guidelines are. We've done a lot of renewable energy within that, but also smaller projects, energy efficiency improvements. And so 50 cents on the dollar, plus they can go after a guaranteed loan through Joseph's shop if need be. And most of the states got 5 times what they normally would get in an allocation through some funding. So perfect time for that. States are inundated with applications, so make sure you get on their list and get that application going if need be. There's also some technical assistance grants out there to do different things like energy audits and that sort of thing, and also some technical assistance grants to actually help business owners prepare the application. So the REAP tag. So follow back up with your local energy coordinator. Those programs are handled at the state. And then 2 other programs, and then I promise I'll be quiet. The intermediary relending program is just that. It is an intermediary program. We loan money to an intermediary, which can be a Native American tribe, an economic development entity, a nonprofit, even a municipality. That's a 1% loan for 30 years. And the purpose is to set up a revolving loan fund to ultimately fund small businesses. We find that local folks on the ground geographically have a much better handle on how to loan money in very small amounts. I say small amounts. These are still $25, $30, $50, $100,000, but maybe not quite ready for a commercial loan. They can go after an IRP and be an ultimate recipient. So there are multiple IRP lenders across the nation. Check with the ones in your state and see if that's a possibility for an ultimate recipient loan. Or if you want to get into the revolving loan fund business, you can do so with an IRP. You can also do that with a business development grant that I talked about a few programs ago, but different ways where you can get into the revolving loan fund. And then last, but certainly not least, the Rural Micro Entrepreneur Assistance Program. I don't know where they got that name, but we call it RMAP, and operates as pretty much the same way as an IRP, except there is a grant component to it, a little bit higher interest rate, a little bit more funding pressure on it from time to time. But that's a great program if you're wanting to dip into the revolving loan fund area and you want to get some of that grant, especially to help drive your outreach and so forth. So with that, I want to give my counterparts plenty of time for their programs as well. But Dave, if you've got
Ryan, the one thing I didn't hear you mention was just the B&I program, the Business and Industry Loan Guarantee Program.
Well, I don't want to take Joseph's thunder because I know he's going to talk about some of the guaranteed programs.
Well, see, that'll dovetail. That gives me the segue there. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So I'll let Joseph talk about that. That's actually my new job. My previous job was handling all these other programs on the state level. So I'm glad Joseph is on the call and Meg as well. But yeah, that's going to be a perfect segue because the B&I program and the 1RD in particular, these are the big ones and kind of our flagship programs that if you haven't heard of, Joseph will fill you in on it. So I'll leave it there.
Okay, yeah, and we will segue over to Joseph and just Anna and the other folks here. We will get to your questions. We'll let these folks make their presentations, and then we'll kind of go down through and start throwing your questions at them. So Joseph, go ahead.
Yep. Yeah, and I won't take a ton of time on this. The B&I program, B&I stands for Business and Industry, and it is a guarantee program where you would find a private bank or lender of some sort, like my firm, to underwrite the project with your underlying operation, and then work with Brian and his team at the state level or in DC to gain consensus and alignment with the agency. You make sure that it aligns with the regulations before closing that loan. Of course, that's a complicated process, but at a high level, that's what that program does. And for meat and poultry specifically, the B&I program would typically be the conduit for funding and financing into that type of an industry. Loans go up to 25 million, so these can be relatively substantial. And can cover a variety of uses, be they, expanding an existing operation, potentially starting a new operation, bringing in equipment, and things of that nature. The Rural Energy for America program, known as REAP, and Brian touched on the grant side. The grant can be paired obviously with a guaranteed loan as well. That can also play into this industry specifically, and we've seen more and more interest across the country in even conceptually the idea of like a microgrid where your facility might absorb enough power and may have enough excess land or enough of a rooftop to facilitate installation of a renewable energy source like solar to effectively take that facility off the grid, maybe even be positioned to sell power back to the grid and generate a little bit of income for the entity. So we've seen some interest in that, and again, depending on the size and scale of a meat and poultry type operation, that could be a really interesting and intriguing opportunity. Of course, REAP can be used, funding can be used for energy management systems, cooling systems, lighting systems, anything that kind of touches into that more sustainable energy, renewable energy space. So, I'm not here to tout North Avenue Capital. The key here is making sure that these folks know there are really amazing programs that are sponsored through the USDA. Yes, we do that. There's a whole lot of other bank. In fact, sometimes your community bank is even better positioned to support you in finding a guaranteed loan. That might be the better option for you. We'd be happy to talk through any of those things if we can be of assistance. But that's really all we do. We'll dabble a little bit in 7A. We're not going to talk about that today, but the primary focus of our firm is working with Brian and his counterparts across the country, try to loosen up capital in these markets where, frankly, it's really hard to come by sometimes.
Great. And just before I throw it over to Meg, the REAP program now, does that end at the end of this year? Is that the end gate on it, or is there life after 2024?
So there are deadlines. The deadlines allow the states to compile and score their applications, but it has been well funded through the years, and so probably not as well funded as it has been. But the program is an ongoing program. Applications can generally be accepted year round, but they do.
Right.
They do allow for a competition from time to time, just so they can compile them, get them funded out the door, and then continue to accept applications. So yeah.
And Brian, could you maybe just to make sure the grant side of things probably has a shorter shelf life than the guaranteed loan piece? Would that be an accurate statement? Just to be clear.
Yeah, right. I think it would be. The grant is going to be. I mean, you can combine them with a guaranteed loan. I mean, we understand what that does to the guaranteed loan, but you don't have to have a guaranteed loan with it. You can just do the grant. But if you brought 25% to the table, got a 50% grant, then you can get a 25% guaranteed loan. That would typically be what that looks like. The grant part of it is going to be it can be standalone or it can be in conjunction with the guaranteed loan. And then in that instance, the grant funds would be utilized for whatever the project is. We still have to look at the term requirements and the equity requirements on the guaranteed loan, and the grant is just kind of I don't even like to use the term subsidized, but that's somewhat what it does.
And Dave, to your point on timing, I might just mention too that part of the Inflation Reduction Act also has made available some very attractive tax credits, tax equity credits that, in combination with some of these REAP options, can again make a project that might otherwise have seemed like insurmountable or something that you couldn't really go after, make it very, very plausible. And in fact, I mean, we're seeing projects where you might literally have more money in the bank as a borrower, as an operator, with a new system that has you off the grid than before you actually did that project. Not just like income that might come from selling some power back here and there, but I mean like literally cash coming back through some of these programs. So there's a right now in particularly, I would say there's significant opportunity, and I do think a little bit of some time constraints that are worth considering if there's somebody on this call who has been toying with the idea. And again, I'm sure Meg has some solutions in this space too, but this would be a good time to talk with your local bank or a national lender like us to see if there's opportunity to put some meat on those bones and maybe pull the trigger.
Yep, any tax credits too, new market tax credits.
Got it.
The more folks that want to come to the table with funding resources and funding ideas, just engage us early and often, and
Right.
it's feasible.
Okay, I am going to throw it over to Meg right now, and the question came in, and just for everybody's information, we'll have everyone's contact information at the end of this roundtable, so you get in touch with them directly. But Meg, you're the one, Brian and Joseph talk about the broad range of things that they can do, but you're targeted very much on the processing sector. So fill us in a little bit on the basis for the MPIOP program and what people should know.
Yeah, mine's actually really simple after all of these other financing options. So we are specifically this loan fund that was established. It's specifically for meat and poultry processing facilities. You need to be USDA inspected or plan to become USDA inspected, but you can be either primary slaughter facility and or a secondary processor that is USDA inspected. So, somebody that's doing like your smoked meats, ready to eat, doing some further processing with meat for the supply chain. So our loans are eligible for a pretty broad use of funds, meat equipment, real estate, facilities upgrade or updates, renovations, energy efficiency programs. These are eligible for startups and existing facilities. It covers a broad range. We have our interest rates, they vary by programs, and the intermediary lender that was awarded the program and was established in your area. Ours right now are 5 to 7% interest rates. They amortize just based on what the funds are being used for. So equipment is going to be like 7 to 15 years, real estate 15 to maybe 20, 30 years, working capital on a shorter 1 to 3 years, right? So pretty typical of working with like a commercial lender. Our program requires some kind of owner equity. If you're a startup, we're looking at 10 to 20%, cash that the owner's making some in cash investment as well. And then, we have a similar process that would be working with a commercial traditional lender of a required, getting together all your required documents, doing the loan packaging, underwriting, very similar. Our loan maximum is $5 million. That's probably pretty typical of my peers in the network and the other MPILP lenders. We can do lower loans of 50,000, but as you all might know, rural development, there's quite a bit of work that is required for to access these loan programs, like the underwriting, but the environmental information, and making sure that you fall into those guidelines, and adhere to the requirements on that. So a $50,000 loan might not be worth the time and investment that it takes to package. So it might not be a best fit. If you're looking at projects that are much larger, though, that's where these other loan programs can fit in. And so if you're working with a lender like Joseph, an MPILP loan, a meat and poultry loan specific to like what we do, can stack really nicely with the BNI loan. If you're doing solar or a big energy initiative, you can also do a REAP loan. So, in the lender world, we call that like capital stacking, right? You can access multiple rural development financing programs and have them work for you at the same time. So our the meat and poultry loan. This might differ for one of those other intermediary lenders in your state, but to give you a sense of like how we're operating, for ours, what we're looking for is like, so $5 million if you're a startup is kind of probably going to be a fraction of your project. We can fit really nicely as a gap and like gap financing, just do a portion of the equipment that's needed, or the working capital, or maybe we would just do the construction, and either your local bank or a lender like Joseph kind of adds other partners, other lending partners to that capital stack to make it work. The MPILP can also work really well for gap financing. So to do, or gap financing, bridge financing. So reimburse you for those before you get a grant. If you need that money, say don't have it while you're spending it, we can do, MPILP might be well suited for a project like that. You know, ours, we prefer to have a shorter term loans. You know, we're not really eager to wrap up our money into long-term 20-year, you know, real estate projects. Not all of it, but I think equipment, working capital, construction, those type of activities work really well for this program.
You're on mute. Meg, I was going to throw in, you might,
Go ahead, Chris.
you might outline a little bit to our viewers and listeners about the MPILP funds and how they may not be available everywhere right now, since the program's been out a little while. We do have some intermediary lenders that still have funding, but not everywhere.
That is true. Okay, like I said, there are 29 organizations across the country that are intermediary lenders that are specifically meat and poultry intermediary lenders. They service only 18 states and Puerto Rico. So if you, I've got a list of folks. You can also just contact your local rural development office, and they can tell you if there's a lender in your area. If anybody wants to like jump in the chat and ask specifically where you're at, and if there's a lender there, I can tell you real quick and who that is. So yeah, there are folks again, still just those 18 states. Some people have run through their money, run through those loan funds. This was established in 2023, and 3-year program for those, or the lenders have 3 years to loan that money out. I have not seen anything in the Farm Bill that sounds like we're going to get another influx of this specifically for meat and poultry lending again.
And Brian just put into the chat here the link to the website that provides folks with information about that. I appreciate that, Brian. Yep. Chris, any other follow-up you wanted to, after these guys went through the roundtable here, what they offer?
You know, we have been talking for a few months here about financial stacks and alternative financing options, and I hope you all are sure seeing it today. So you're getting a lot of information on alternative financing options, whether you got a grant or you didn't get a grant. You know, there are ways to get your project off the ground, and we just want to remind everyone to reach out if you have questions. If for some reason you don't get, or you haven't gotten some of the other presenters' information, even from our previous roundtables, please reach out to Dave and I, and we'll make sure and get you connected to the right group or the right person to help you through some of these discussions that can get very deep very quick. So let's just reach out. We'll try to help.
Let me, in one of the previous roundtables we had a discussion about, you know, you focus on financing a processing facility, the brick and mortar and the equipment. But from each of your perspective, what's the broader view when somebody comes to you with a proposal or something like that, beyond just the bricks and mortar or mobile or modular infrastructure there? What's the important part of the more holistic business?
Maybe I'll just speak as a lender. A lot of times you'll think in terms of the 5 C's of credit, like that's a general framework when you're thinking about an opportunity like this. One of those C's that I think is one of the reasons I love the business we're in is character, and the opportunity to work in rural America, rural communities with what we commonly refer to as salt of the earth type people. But I think that's a really critical aspect of anything that we're going to look at, is understanding the men and women behind the project, their vision, their experience. And it doesn't mean that it has to be like this super sophisticated, like, latest and greatest technology. That's not what we're looking for. In fact, that's frequently not what we expect or anticipate or necessarily even want to see. But I think really understanding who are the men and women that are standing behind these projects is every bit as important as the brick and mortar or the balance sheet or the P&L, right? Like those are important too. But having that opportunity to have a relationship, and unlike Meg, we are doing 15, 20, 25, sometimes even beyond 25-year projects. And so if we're going to stroke a 10 or $15 million check on a 25-year project, I mean, we want to know that we're getting into business with people that we want to partner with for that long. Now, will most loans last 25 years? Probably not. But if they do, we want to know that we're locking arms and say strapping our wagon to a horse we can trust and are ready to go the distance with.
Great. Meg, from your perspective, when you've been looking at some projects,
Yeah. I've been presented a couple of projects that have this kind of, especially in the small world, and where there is a high demand, and that demand still exists after COVID. COVID shined a light on it, and it hasn't gone away, but it might have gotten harder. It has definitely not been easier in this industry. But this philosophy of if you build it, they'll come. We need to know who's coming. When are they going to come? How much of it is going to come? And how are you going to get them to come? So, that we need to see the business plan. I coach and encourage folks all the time, but that business plan isn't just to sell to a lender. That's your roadmap for your market development, for detailing how you're going to get that throughput, what throughput you need, who those people that who's coming, when they're coming, how they're coming. So the business plan, that is also going to have your detailed projections. We need to look at that, the pro forma. Joseph mentioned the C's of lending. Character is really important, establishing that relationship with your loan officer, and being able to tell your story, build that confidence. We're definitely looking for that. Looking for, if you don't have the experience, you've got the passion, you are surrounding yourself with a management team that does have that experience, whether that's going to be the folks that are in the plant and boots on the ground, at upper management and operational management, or even technical assistance advisors, folks like Flower Hill and the Niche Meat Processors Assistance Network. That speaks volumes when I hear an operator who might be new, or actually still an established operator, who's working and consulting with other experts, or involved in their state trade association. That tells me that they are open to innovation, suggestions, feedback, and looking and not assuming that they've got all the right answers but are open for new. So the character. And then we've got the cash flow is important. What we really need to see is your financials that are detailed enough to be able to clearly understand that we know where that throughput is coming from, both on the slaughter side or if you're doing the secondary retail meat or the secondary processing side, and projections that are detailed enough that we know you've got a clear idea of how you're going to get there. Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Appreciate that. Then just one last thing before we go, because we're getting some questions here in the chat, but the folks that got the MPEP 2 preliminary announcement have been given a 90-day window there to line up their financing and to demonstrate that they've got that secured. How does that work with your loan approval process? That's for both you and Joseph, maybe. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the MPOP lender, if you've got one in your area, and are working with, we are really well suited to help you with that financing, because you've already done most of the hard work with that application and the approval. Ideally, you've got your business plan, you had to submit projections, you went through the environmental information process, and we have to do a lot of the similar thing. So our timeline, it can take as good as 2 to 3 months. So we can meet that deadline within that 90-day deadline. But that is also dependent on the quality of your loan readiness. If your financial documents are in order, you should have your 2023 business tax returns done and ready for a loan officer, or for your loan file. Update, you submitted that grant application in the fall of last year. So projections probably need to be updated. Your use of funds probably need to be updated, and getting those updated, getting a file really as strong as you can and ready to put in front of an investor, is going to get you really well suited for a quick approval or quicker approval.
Okay, Joseph, how about with North Avenue? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just on that theme that Meg talked about from a timing perspective, our processes generally take a good bit of time. It is very dependent on the preparedness of the borrower. While I'm not familiar with the grant that you mentioned, any grant, we're going to look at and perceive as an element of equity that's being injected into the business alongside whatever loan we might be contemplating. So Brian mentioned new market tax credits. There's a host of other sources of capital when you talk about capital stack, right? Grants, tax credits, all we're going to look at in that kind of a situation is a BNI loan. All of that other stuff could absolutely come in and strengthen the overall credit worthiness of the project by lowering the need for debt and having more cash in the project. So that's sort of, I don't know if that answers the question, but that's generally how we work.
Yeah. And just to be clear, I know they put a 90-day on there. I think there is some flexibility on that, as long as they know there's a really good faith effort or things are in progress. So I don't want to scare people away.
Yeah.
We do have a number of things in the Q&A here, so let me just jump to it. And Anna's been very patient because she typed this in early. But Ryan, this is one for you, that they have a rural business says, how do I find a not-for-profit entity that would be interested in helping us apply for some of these programs, particularly the Rural Business Development Program, I think is what she's looking at.
Yeah, that's a great question. It is true that the applicant has to be from the municipality, from a nonprofit, or it can be a Native American tribe or something like an economic development entity in some cases. And is sometimes the challenge, to try to find someone to apply on the business's behalf, because this is a pass-through grant. It doesn't go directly to the business. It goes through whatever entity is applying. The ownership of what we're improving or purchasing remains with the applicant, not the ultimate business. So it's not going to be something where we send $200,000 and they get to buy a building and keep it. So there's some nuances in there, and yeah, sometimes it is difficult. I would start at the city level, at the municipality level, and see if they are familiar with CDBG grants, or if you're in a tribal area, start with the tribal organization, because ultimately that area is going to benefit from whatever project you're doing. And then if you need to expand out, look for local community action agencies or some other nonprofits, but also engage your state rural development staff too, because I guarantee that they have a pretty good list of nonprofits that they have worked with. Now, we don't recommend one over another and so forth, but they can provide the list. And again, I hate to say it, but Google is your friend, and it sometimes feels like you're drinking from a fire hose when you're looking at grants. The only thing I'd caution you on is don't pay to get a grant in most cases. So just look for those kind of opportunities. Look for historical projects that we've done in the past and who the applicant was, and that's a good way to find them.
Yeah, and I'll just add, for those that are interested in organizing as co-ops, there's a whole network of cooperative development centers around the country.
Exactly.
And I know many of them have done that, particularly the rural business development. Lane, I'm going to get for you, Brian. He says, I talked with my state USDA Energy Efficiency Office regarding the grant program, the REAP grant, because my project involves totally refurbishing a former USDA meat processing plant that was shut down in 2011. I've been told our situation would not qualify due to not being able to have a comparison of before and after energy savings. But how can they overcome something like that, Brian?
Well, from 2011, boy, that's getting tough. I don't know that there's an easy way to overcome that. We have to have some kind of a baseline to see that the energy efficiency improvements that we're putting in are actually going to be improvements. That's a statute requirement in that program. So it's energy efficiency improvements can't be used for new construction. It has to be refurbishing old ones. You mentioned, Lane, that you have reached out to your energy coordinator. Is there a way to get historical utility bills or something of that nature? It's probably best if you contact me offline and let's have that conversation, because it sounds tough, but I don't know that it's a complete that there's just no possible way. We may need to try to get a little bit creative in how we can find what those previous utility costs were, and maybe working with your utility provider or something like that. But going back that far, yeah, it's a little tough. But let's not slam the door on it. Let's have another discussion offline, and we'll see what we can do.
Great. And I know a lot of the conversation has been on new projects, but Brett here, you've been working with Brett, and he has a facility that's up and running, but he's got some investors there that he'd like to get paid off. And what kind of advice, and throw in as well, does the difference it makes being USDA inspected or not? Yeah. So.
So we would probably, I think, and rural development might consider something like that, a refinance. I don't know, it gets a little fuzzy. That might not be an eligible use of funds. And we are restricted, this program, the MPILT program is restricted to, we can refinance debt. but only 50% of the total loan amount can be refi, and that's for particular situations in which, like, we would be able to have a stronger collateral position or it improves cash flow. So I'm going to say that might not be an eligible use of funds that'd be a fit for our loan program.
Unfortunately, in today's interest rate market, there's no low interest loans hardly out there. I mentioned the 0% red leg. Unfortunately, that wouldn't work for the 0% red leg. Maybe a regular IRP. I don't know what the dollar amount that you're looking for, and you certainly don't have to provide it. But if there is an IRP lender in your area, that might be lower than what the commercial rate, if you're talking about, a couple $100,000 or less. Anything more than that, and unfortunately, with this rate environment that we're in, there's just not much out there.
You know, if I may, I'll add, like, I think I would say, like, within the BNI program specifically, you can do some owner buyout, acquisition, even family transfer type under certain circumstances. Again, size and low interest is a relative term here in June of 2024. So I think you probably have to just kind of dig into the details to see if there's a guarantee program that could work for what you're describing. Maybe not.
Yeah, the purchasing out the investors you can buy out owners, as Joseph mentioned, but they can no longer have a management or ownership in the company. So
They have to be on their way altogether. That's right.
All right, great. And then this next one, and Chris, I'll throw you into the mix here is someone to answer it here, but Larry Joe Carter says, I'm trying to build a 50,000 square foot plant in Aberdeen, Mississippi, killing 250 head of cattle and 2,500 head of hogs a week. It's about $950 per square foot. Can someone help move me in the right direction? I don't know which, in financing or what, but just your thoughts on that type of facility and cost per square foot.
Well, when you say capital stack, I think that's what you'd be looking for in a scenario like that. You'd probably need relatively a few layers. So could you do something like a BNI loan? Perhaps, right? Would some of that build out be considered energy efficient to where you could layer on some REAP dollars? Maybe. What you're talking about is getting darn close to 50 million. That's a big, if my math is correct. I'm not the smartest guy on this call, but that's a pretty big project. It's been done.
Yeah.
But probably with several layers, I would say, of capital sources coming in to help round out. You need to see some equity somewhere in there. That would be a really critical component of something, that large.
I would recommend that as well. I think that would be a good project for us to look at one-on-one. Let's dive into the project overall, and then let's see what we can come up with and what group of people that we should be talking to versus one lender for a $50 million project.
Yeah, and I think that's important. That's one of the main reasons the USDA pulled together the technical assistance program that Chris and I are part of, and we're around through the end of 2026, and people have looked at us as the folks that help you get the grants, but our technical assistance covers a whole gamut of your designing your facilities, what's your business plan, your marketing plan, and all of that. Yeah. And then the last one we'll do here is before we run out of time and put up the information on how to get a hold of these folks. Jolene says, is there a solar water heat program looking to reduce energy costs? I think solar water heaters would be included in the REAP, would they not, Brian?
Yeah. So DOE did have some of that before. I can't keep up with all of the different incentives and all the different programs out there. For a solar water heater for a small business, though, that would be considered an energy efficiency improvement. And so as long as we're not talking about new construction, Yeah, I would encourage you, if you're looking at doing something like that, to get an energy audit, or if it's a larger facility, get an energy assessment or an industrial assessment on your facility and find out where all the low-hanging fruit is. Because sometimes, even though a solar water heater sounds great, it may not always be the best bang for your buck. And if you're going after grant dollars, you want the most bang for your buck. So sometimes it's lighting, insulation, windows, whatever. But certainly would be an eligible purpose for a small business to tap into the REAP grant and save money, particularly if you're using a lot of water. So I'm thinking we did one for a car wash that it made a lot of sense, but they also put some panels up too. So.
Okay, great. And then Lane just said, yeah, he does have information on the energy usage from 2011 from his co-op. But Lane, I'd just suggest you reach out to us and we'll see if we can, help you along through that process as well. So with that, I really appreciate all of you being on here. We will be, for those attendees that are with us, you will be getting a 2-question survey as one. What did you think about today's session? We don't call these webinars. We feel that the world can get along without another PowerPoint presentation, but if you felt that something was missing because you didn't have PowerPoint, let us know. And then what are some topics you'd like to see us address in the future? Chris and I are working to do about one of these a month. We've been very heavily focused on the financing side most recently, but I know there's some other topics moving forward, so please let us know. And with that, Shelby, if you'll kind of put up, I think we have a slide here that talks about how folks can get a hold of us. I'm hoping.
I don't have a slide prepared.
Oh, you don't? Well, then if folks will hang on here, I will pull it up from, I just got to go in here to my, yeah. Okay, let me just share my screen if I can. There we go. And I think everybody should be able to see that. And that will let you know how to get a hold of each of these 3 folks. Don't hesitate to reach out to them. With any future questions, we really appreciate their willingness to be with us today and for the information they provided. And like I say, we will be producing an FAQ. I'm behind on a couple of those, so I got to get busy. But this will be on our website at Flower Hill. So if somebody missed this and they wanted to get the information, they can easily download it. So with that, I appreciate everybody. Appreciate all 3 of you and the information, the time you took. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you all.
Take care, everyone.
Well,
Thanks,
take
everyone.
care. All the best.